He conversed a great deal, and showed no depression of spirits. Among other things, he asked me where I was born. I told him in Scotland. "Have you any property there?" said he. "No, I'm a younger brother, and they do not bestow much on people of that description in Scotland." "Is your elder brother a lord?" "No, Lord Lauderdale is the head of our family." "I a relation of Lord Lauderdale's?" "He is an acquaintance of mine. He was sent ambassador from your king to me when Mr. Fox was prime minister. Had Mr. Fox lived, it never would have come to this, but his death put an end to all hopes of peace. Milord Lauderdale est un bon garçon," adding, "I think you resemble him a little, though he is dark and you are fair." When dinner was over, a cup of strong coffee was handed round. He then rose and went into the after cabin, asking the Admiral and all the party to accompany him, the ladies among the rest. This was the only time I ever saw them in the apartment in which he slept. After some conversation, he said in a cheerful and playful way that he would show us his camp bed. I sent for Marchand, his premier valet de chambre, who received his order and soon returned with 2 small packages in leather cases, one of which contained the bedstead, which was composed of steel, and when packed up was not above 2 feet long and 18 inches in circumference. The other contained the mattress and curtains, the latter of green silk. In 3 minutes the whole was put together and formed a very elegant small bed about 30 inches wide. He then went out and walked the quarter deck for some time and retired to his cabin about 7:30. Soon after, when the Admiral was going to return his ship, he proposed to Bertrand to take leave of him. He went into the cabin, but returned immediately with an apology, saying he was undressed and going to bed. In the course of the afternoon, the Admiral invited Bonaparte, with the ladies and all his principal officers, to breakfast the following day, which invitation was accepted apparently with much satisfaction. When I went on deck early the next morning, the 16th of July, I observed that the Superbe had a tompion out of her guns and the man ropes on her yards, as if for the purpose of saluting and manning ships, and as I had received Bonaparte without even the guard presenting arms, I felt that he might concede that I had intentionally treated him with disrespect. I therefore sent the officer of the watch with my compliments to Sir Henry Hotham, and begged to know if it was his intention to salute Bonaparte on his going on board, and to receive him with manned yards, and if so, whether I was to do the same on his quitting the Bellerophon. He sent for an answer that it was not his intention to salute, but he meant to man ship, that I was not to do so on his quitting the Bellerophon, but was at liberty to man yards on his return. I likewise received directions from the Admiral to hoist a signal when the boat with his visitors was ready to leave the ship, that he might have time to make the necessary preparations. About 10 a.m., the barge was manned, and a captain's guard turned out. When Bonaparte came on deck, he looked at the marines, who were generally fine-looking young men, with much satisfaction, went through their ranks, inspected their arms, and admired their appearance, saying to Bertrand, "How much might be done with 100,000 such soldiers as these?" He asked which had been longest in the corps, went up and spoke to him. His questions were put in French, which I interpreted, as well as the man's answers. He inquired how many years he had served. On being told upwards of 10, he turned to me and said, "Is it not customary in your service to give a man who has been in it so long some mark of distinction?" He was informed that the person in question had been a sergeant, but was reduced to the ranks for some misconduct. He then put the guards through the part of their exercise, whilst I interpreted it to the captain marines, who did not understand French, the maneuvers he wished to have performed. He made some remarks on the difference of the charge with the bayonet between our troops and the French. He found fault with our method of fixing the bayonet to the musket, as being more easy to swift off if seized by an enemy when in the act of charging. On getting into the boat, he looked at the barge's crew and said, "What very fine set of men you've got." He then turned to Las Casas, who had come on board the ship in plain clothes, but now appeared in a naval uniform, and said jocularly, "Comment, Las Casas, vous êtes militaire?" "What, Las Casas, you are a military man? I have never till now seen you in uniform." He answered, "Please, your Majesty, before the Revolution I was a lieutenant in the Navy, and as I think a uniform carries more consideration with it, a foreign country, I have adopted it."